I want to review uh, the the Dharma talk I gave last time a little bit about Fuketsu's speck of dust. It's one of my two favorite Dharma talks of Suzuki Roshi, and I'm going to add another one to it today, which is called Good and Bad, Half and Half, and they complement each other. I'd like to encourage you that if you have the curiosity, to go to David Chadwick's wonderful website called cuke.com, cuke.com. He's dedicated his life to organizing, finding, editing all of Suzuki Roshi's lectures. And it's a treasure trove. And so the one about Fuketsu's one particle of dust came from a Dharma talk in the 26th of July in 1971. And the other one, Good and Bad, Half and Half, came from an afternoon lecture at a one-day sesshin in March of 1966. And if you have nothing to do, it's a lot better to read Suzuki Roshi than to spend too much time tweeting or texting. So I want to just review what Fuketsu's koan was about. Fuketsu said, if you pick up one speck of dust, the nation will increase. If you don't, nothing will happen. And you remember this, picking up a speck of dust is doing anything. Because next to the immensity of big mind, everything is a speck of dust. Building a Zen temple is a speck of dust. Creating Buddhism is a speck of dust. Saving the last whale is a speck of dust. Some people will say, no, I'm not going to pick it up. People will suffer. Nothing will change, but it's not my business. I'm not going to do it. I'm going to concentrate on it, on myself. Some people will do that. But if you're one of the people that shows up for this Dharma talk, you're probably not like that. And you probably have a kind of generally progressive idea of politics and social structure. And you'd like to do something to aid people in their suffering, or to relieve their suffering. The critically important thing that Fuketsu points out is that once you pick up the speck of dust, you pick up the entire world. You bring everything into being. I'm going to read you his quote. So when we pick up the speck of dust, we realize, we manifest the entire world. It's not that we just do a good thing. We bring up enlightenment and we bring up delusion. We bring up good and bad. We bring up birth and death. It's all there. And it's important that we understand that. And the second Dharma talk I'm going to refer to today clarifies that in a nice way. Dogen Zenji said, if you pick up one thing, there's birth and death, enlightenment and delusion, Buddha and sentient beings, something good and something bad. So we call it the Genjo koan. This is our koan to solve. This is the koan of actual living, everyday living. We may think when we do something good when we're young, we may carry on a certain period of time in our lives just doing good and believing that we're just doing good. But when we get older, we see that we actually haven't. We see that we've generated bad karma as well as good karma. And that's what I want to talk about today, but I just want to make sure we're grounded in Fuketsu's koan. So he reminds us that the purpose of studying Buddhism is not to create Buddhism. It's not to establish Buddhist teaching or Buddhist groups. It's not to found Zen centers. Our job is to help people find their way, to find their own authentic way, to contact their own fundamental intention, and to keep a wary eye on themselves so they don't hurt others, or so they minimize their hurt from others. So anytime we try to do something from the point of view of ourselves and our personality, the odds are it's not going to go well. We've all been in political groups that have been fallen apart from quarrels and ego struggles and leadership struggles and strategy struggles and decisions. It's because everybody's operating out of their personality, out of their small mind. So one of the reasons that we meditate is so that we can let that small mind soften. As Judy Gilbert says, fall through the bottom of it. I say slip out the side. Find the spaces between our thoughts where we can contact big mind. And big mind includes everything. Everything. Not just the stuff we like. Not just the nice stuff. If we get too attached to our Zen practice, to our Zen community, to our way of doing it, we'll be involved in a kind of self-centered thinking. It'll sneak up on us. Compared to Buddha land, the best Zen practice I could establish is just a speck of dust. So we want to refer always to big mind. We want to try to always set aside our small mind, and why I'll explain in a minute. Suzuki Roshi says we should not be proud of our faculties or our personality or our bright, smart mind. When you have a good practice, that's also an enemy of Buddhism. You don't pursue the Buddha way for the sake of change or for your own personal interest. In the same way, we don't seek some advantage in our everyday life. Whether people like what you do or not, doesn't matter. If it's necessary, you do it. So when we do it, whatever we do, we know on some level it's a delusion. We know we're doing good and we're also doing bad at the same time. It's unavoidable. This is the Genjo koan. So what do we do? How do we behave in the face of this? Well, one way we behave is tentatively. We don't act vigorous and cocksure and certain that our way is the right way. We don't act as if our way will be the right way forever. Our impulse to do something grows out of this moment, this particular set of conditions, and we tiptoe forward. I always think of a fox, watching a fox walk and stop and look around and stop and look around. That's what we are. Buddha mind is wild mind. Wilderness is Buddha mind. So let me see if there's anything else I need to do here. Yeah, here's an example. Suzuki Roshi says, people may say it might be better not to be involved in such a rigid practice. It's very difficult to discuss Buddhism with such people because they don't know the Genjo koan, the koan of everyday life. They don't know that day after day, moment after moment, we're creating bad karma. We good people, us, the good guys and girls, we're creating bad karma. We have to accept that. And he says, even in Tassajara, we're eating eggs, you know. They're living beings. Eggs are not dead. Each grain is a living being. You're killing them. But you have to eat them knowing they're not dead. That's the contradiction. It's not thinking about it, not pretending that it doesn't matter, but knowing fully that every act you take is both positive and negative, is both good and bad. We do it because we choose big mind. If we're in our small mind, we say, oh, the Buddhist precepts, I'm not allowed to do that. But in big mind, both being allowed and not being allowed are included. So big mind will accept it, will accept you to do that. We shouldn't be bothered so much by the idea of good and bad. We should be concerned that our practice is sincere and supported by big mind. Okay, that's the review of last week. So, in this Dharma talk, which is actually about contradiction in human nature, Suzuki Roshi talks a little bit about how the way-seeking mind arises. And it arises when we have some kind of problem that feels insoluble. It arises when we have some direct feeling of our own problem. So most of the time when we study something or we want to solve something, we set about concentrating on it and separating it from the rest of our life and just doing it rigidly and putting our attention on it for a long time. You know, maybe you go to church on Sundays, or maybe you go to Zen Center on Sunday. You concentrate on your spiritual life, but if the rest of the week that you don't, that's not a practice. That's not a way-seeking mind. But eventually, no matter what you do, you're going to start to feel some contradiction in your life, some sense that things are maybe meaningless, or they're not working, or you have nothing to rely on. That's where way-seeking mind starts. That's where the quest for some help or some need becomes focused. When you're young, certainly when I was young, I could put all my energy into choose something that felt good, and I could just do it and ignore the bad aspects of it and just carry me through for a long time. You do that, but after a while your conscience kicks up because you can't not see. You can't not see that in this perfect world of, let's say, communes, some children were not always thriving, relationships between men and women were not always wholesome or not always generous and supportive. And you realize that the thing you've been hanging your hat on, or the thing that you've been assembling as a kind of crutch, in the final analysis is going to let you down. That's where way-seeking mind starts. You can work hard, you can concentrate, you can keep doing it, but it's not going to work. That's why we're all sitting together. That's why we're all investigating some kind of practice. By nature, human beings are half good and half bad. That's the fact of the matter. All of us, each of us. We want to do something, we say, oh yes, I want to be good, I'm going to be good. I'm going to get up early every morning and sit zazen. And then it's early morning and you say, oh God, no, I'll just sleep a little bit longer. Back, yes, no, back, forth. What should I do? Maybe I'll take 2 minutes. Maybe I'll take 5 minutes. But the more conscientious you actually become, the more strict with yourself and the more disciplined, instead of feeling 50% bad, you'll start to feel 95% bad, because you'll be looking much more scrupulously and you'll be examining yourself with much less, giving yourself less slack and less certainty. So when we know this, when we know that we're half bad and half good, then the question really becomes pointed. What do we do and how do we do it? When I was younger, I used to think, well, if we just had a perfectly just economic system, if social systems in our house, in our nation were fairer and more just and more judicial, everything would be okay. But in fact, it seems that the more that our human culture advances, the more pronounced the difficulties actually become. They don't become simpler. I grew up in a small farm town where in Amish country, people used to build barns together. Their time was preoccupied working. There was a great deal of work to do. They did it collectively. They did it together. Life was pretty simple. People were pretty happy, pretty content. Life made sense. Now, as our civilization advances, everything gets very dislocated. Jobs disappear and go to other countries where it's cheaper. People are not trained. They don't know how to respond. Everybody's got computers. Everybody's got phones. People are texting and not. People are sitting in restaurants opposite each other, fiddling with their phones and not talking. It's not conducive to happiness and to good relationships. So when we realize the absolute presence of both positive and negative aspects of our personality, that engages our way-seeking mind. Because if we're honest, we're going to say, oh my God, what do we do? Human nature remains the same. As long as we have human nature, it's physically impossible to have an idealistic spiritual culture in the human world. Ain't going to happen. That doesn't mean we stop trying. That doesn't mean we stop leaning into our intention to be helpful. But it means we do that knowing that it's the nature of reality to have positive and negative. We're never going to be just good people. So it's actually dangerous to think of ourselves that way. Because when we think of ourselves as the good guys, we wind up bombing hotels in Baghdad in the middle of the night, bombing men, women, and children in their beds. But we're the good guys, so it must be okay. We don't think about it. We don't think about the wreckage that we make in the world. And we don't realize that it's because of our uneasiness, because of our difficulty in balancing our negative and positive aspects, that we're so fixed on creating something perfect in the world. Perfect justice, perfect spirituality, perfect economy. We can talk about spiritual life as much as we want. We can read as many spiritual books as much as we want. It's not going to help. One of my favorite poems by Gary Snyder is called This Tokyo. It was written in the 50s when he was in Tokyo in Japan, in the kind of post-war ruins of Japan, which was completely impoverished and demoralized and dispirited. And the first line of the poem is, war, peace, religion, revolution will not help. And he talks about the opposable thumb. The problem is built into this mechanism. If we don't see our human nature fully and clearly, we can't really study Buddhism because we won't understand what Buddha actually meant. Buddha's religion is based on this, not religion, Buddha's teaching is based on this idea of who we are. It's based on the notion that suffering exists, that negativity exists, that our problems exist. So there's a tendency to want to jump to an easy conclusion and say, well, if human nature is always the same, It's useless to practice. It's useless to study. Uh, let's just be indulgent animals. But our study of Buddhism is based on the fact of big mind, which includes all this negativity, which includes the negative and the positive. We're not trying to improve reality. That's a really important point. We're not trying to improve reality. Big mind has everything. And if we're at odds with big mind, if we can't accept the world as it is, we're never going to be in harmony. Although we're going to think about harmony perhaps differently than we usually do. Buddha accepted the truth of positive and negative aspects of human nature. He started Buddhism based on that fact. He accepted that fact, and he taught us how to live with it. If you try to change that, you're not being a Buddhist. So the Eightfold Path, the precepts, the Four Noble Truths are all teachings on how to deal with this fundamentally discordant, positive and negative 50-50 human nature. That's what the deal is. You could say Buddha is teaching us how to suffer, or how to live in a world in which suffering is so dominant. He's not teaching us how to change the world. And he's not offering you a fence that you can leap over and be on the enlightened side and be immune from this feeling of unease that attends our inability to put two contradictory opposites together. So what can we do? Well, we can move step by step and try to help each other. And because we have both good and bad sides, we actually have the ability to see even the tiniest bit of improvement in our work. We're never going to eradicate the bad side. We're never going to eradicate our production of negative karma. Suzuki Roshi talks about a paper's thickness of difference. That's enough. If we can help a paper's thickness of difference, we're moving things a little bit, changing the balance a little bit. It makes no difference really what kind of situation or problem we have. It's that we have something to work on. That's what takes our focus. That's what takes us away from our just being addicted to our small minds. There's a problem. Oh, let's get to work. Let's work on it. It's not just thinking about me and what I can do and will I get a blue rakusu or a black one or a brown robe or... None of it's the point. How do we be helpful? And how do we allow other people to help us? We're never going to be just a clean sheet of paper that has only one side. Ain't going to happen. So realistically, we have to work on ourselves, which is why we sit zazen, why we have a sangha, why we have friends and people that help us and guide us and straighten us and jerk our chain when we're off base. But we live in this vast realm where we have absolute freedom. And if we misuse that absolute freedom just to do something for ourselves, we're actually wasting the opportunity that Buddha's teaching is offering us. We have absolute freedom to do anything. You can follow the path of your negativity. Jehovah's not going to strike you dead. You'll have karma. You can kill. It's not going to end the universe. You can do whatever you want. But there will be consequences. There will be causality. And one of the first things that Buddha taught is that helping someone else is the best way to mitigate the negative aspects of karma, the negative aspects of the personality. But we can't believe that by doing that, we're changing our fundamental nature. We're just controlling it. It's like riding on a well-trained wild horse. The more conscientious we are, the more strict and disciplined we are with ourselves, the more we can kind of trust. But if you've ever been on a horse and had it bolt or jump or throw you, you know stuff can go wrong in a hurry. When we can get in touch with the big realm, which includes everything, when we have big mind, when we have trust in this big mind, this is really the only article of faith that Buddhism asks us to have, is to have faith in the fact that our inner nature is identical with Buddha's mind, with Buddha mind. I had a friend once, a poet named Kirby Doyle, wonderful, crazy, mad Irishman who wound up preaching the gospel on street corners and was maddened by the fact that America was nominally a Christian country and practiced no Christian virtues. And it drove him completely mad. But he once said to me, he said, Buddha was the greatest thief of all time. Buddha put his name on the absolute functioning of the universe. I thought, wow, that was fun. Enjoying our nature. Enjoying our nature. Enjoying our nature. As a part of this vast world, we're not uncertain because we don't know what to do or we don't know where to go. We already know there's nowhere to go. There's no place outside this world to stand. There's no place but here to be. So what's to be uncertain about? We don't know what's going to come next. We don't know what to do. But we can shape our intention on being helpful, even if it's just a paper's width. Every activity that we do, every act, every conception, every conversation takes place in this big realm. Our human efforts, our human culture, everything is based on this conviction that we can't shake if we dwell in big mind. It includes everything and its opposites. So it's all here. Every problem, every answer, every question, it's all here. It's not here in my idea of myself. It's not here in my little attachment to, I'm going to save the last gay whale. It's big mind. And if we're attentive, we do what we have to do. It's that simple. We appeared in this world. That means we're going to disappear from this world. Because we're born, it means we're going to die. It's irrefutable. So, but that's like a homemade contradiction. Because that's, again, looking at the world from the point of view of this transient self. I come into the world, I'm going out of the world. Oh my God, what am I going to do? Nothing changes in big mind except change. Dharmas don't appear or disappear. Perhaps this guest, this sack of meat, comes around for a while like a wave peaking in the ocean and collapses back into the ocean, but the ocean doesn't disappear. So we don't have to worry about that too much. We don't have to be fooled by the contradictions that we make. We have a posture when we sit zazen. It's our own posture. And when we have some posture, we'll have bad habits. But because we have good nature, but because we're conscientious, we can also work on those bad habits. If my posture's bad, I'll know it, and I can adjust it. If my mudra's bad, I'll know it, and I can adjust it. We can't do it when we're jumping from place to place. We have to settle into a kind of practice. There are lots of different religions. I know lots of people that guru hop. But that's just being a water strider. I'm not saying Buddhism is the best practice. It's the best for me. But whatever practice you do, if you don't concentrate and dedicate yourself to it, you'll never get depth. You're just skating across the surface. So, even if we attain enlightenment, we should do something with it. We have this practice. We should do something with it. So ask yourself, what do you want to do? Don't be overeager, because you're going to be doing bad as you do good. But tentatively, what's the direction you want to lean in for this moment, this time? Do it. Who cares what kind of internal state you have if you can't practice kindness, if you can't help other people? Who cares that Buddha came down while you were sitting and gave you a dozen roses? It's meaningless. What are you going to do with it? So, finally, the point is not that our practice is right or wrong, that our posture is right or wrong. The question is, we're making a constant effort. We're focusing our intention consistently, moment after moment after moment, practicing to be helpful, practicing leaning into our good karma, and accepting that it's completely impossible for us to avoid our bad karma. But that Buddha did teach us a way that will minimize it. Maybe that's enough for today. It's a lot to think about. May all beings be filled with loving kindness. May all beings be free from suffering. May all beings be happy and at peace. May all beings be filled with loving kindness. May all beings be free from suffering. May all beings be happy and at peace. May all beings be filled with loving kindness. May all beings be free from suffering. May all beings be happy and at peace.